Imagine this for a moment. You did everything right. You studied hard, you listened to your parents, and you followed the path everyone told you to follow. Get good grades, find a stable job, work hard, and be responsible. But somehow, despite doing all of that, you still feel stuck when it comes to money. At the end of the month, the bills are still there, the pressure is still there, and the freedom you were promised never really arrives. So here's the uncomfortable question. What if the problem isn't how hard you work, but what you were taught about money in the first place? Because most people grow up hearing one idea repeated again and again. Study hard so you can get a safe job. It sounds logical, it sounds secure, and it feels right. But there is another idea, much quieter but far more powerful. Learn how money works so you don't have to work for it forever. These are two completely different paths. One leads to security, but often comes with stress and limitation. The other leads to freedom, but requires a completely different way of thinking. And the truth is, most of us were never taught how to choose between them. This is where our story begins, with a young boy named Robert. Growing up, Robert didn't just have one person teaching him about life. He had two father figures. One believed in education, stability, and working for money. The other believed in financial intelligence, taking risks, and making money work for you. Both cared about him deeply, and both wanted him to succeed, but their advice could not have been more different. Imagine being that child, listening to two people you trust, and slowly realizing that only one of them can be right. Robert was confused, but he also noticed something most people ignore. One man was always worried about money, while the other never seemed afraid of it. And that difference changed everything. So let me ask you honestly, if you had to choose between a life where you work for money and a life where money works for you, which path would you take? Because today is not just a story, it's the beginning of a new way of thinking about money, your future, and the choices that will shape your life. Robert grew up with two father figures, and at first, they both seemed like strong, respectable men. But as he got older, he began to notice something that most people never question. The way they thought about money was completely different, and those differences were shaping their lives in opposite directions. His first father, the one he called Poor Dad, was exactly what society tells us to become. He was highly educated, respected in his field, and had a stable career as a teacher. He believed deeply in the system. To him, success meant studying hard, getting good grades, going to a good school, and finding a secure job. He often said things like, "Job security is everything," and "play it safe." On the surface, his life looked stable and respectable, but behind that stability, there was constant stress. He worried about bills, about expenses, about making ends meet. No matter how hard he worked or how educated he was, money always seemed to control his life. What Robert slowly realized was something uncomfortable. Education did not guarantee financial freedom. You could be smart, hardworking, and disciplined, and still struggle with money. Then there was the second father, the one he called Rich Dad. Unlike Poor Dad, Rich Dad did not have a high level of formal education. He didn't follow the traditional path. He didn't have a prestigious degree or a government position. But what he had was something far more valuable. He understood how money worked. He owned businesses, made investments, and focused on building systems that generated income. While Poor Dad worked for money, Rich Dad focused on making money work for him. And the difference showed. Rich Dad was calm. He was confident. He didn't panic when money was tight, because he knew how to create more. He didn't rely on a paycheck, he relied on his understanding of money. His belief was simple but powerful. Financial education is more important than school education. Because if you don't understand money, no matter how much you earn, you can still lose it. As Robert spent more time observing both men, the contrast became impossible to ignore. Poor Dad worked hard for money, always chasing it, always worried about losing it. Rich Dad, on the other hand, made money work for him. He built assets, created opportunities, and used money as a tool instead of something to fear. One lived with fear and pressure, the other lived with understanding and control. This contrast created a quiet tension inside Robert. Both men cared about him. Both wanted him to succeed. But their advice led in completely different directions. Poor Dad told him, find a safe job. Rich Dad told him, learn how to build income. Poor Dad believed risk was dangerous. Rich Dad believed not taking risks was even more dangerous. One day, Robert couldn't hold his curiosity anymore. He asked Rich Dad a simple question, but it would change the way he saw money forever. Why are you so confident about money? Rich Dad didn't hesitate. He smiled and said, because I understand how it works. It sounded simple, almost too simple, but that sentence stayed in Robert's mind. Because when you really think about it, most people don't understand money at all. They spend years in school learning many things, but almost nothing about how money actually works in real life. That moment became a turning point. It planted a new idea in Robert's mind, one that challenged everything he had been taught. Maybe the difference between struggling and succeeding financially wasn't about working harder. Maybe it was about thinking differently. And now, let me bring this back to you. Because this story is not just about Robert. It's about every one of us. All of us, at some point in life, are influenced by these two voices. One tells us to stay safe, to follow the system, to avoid risk. The other tells us to learn, to question, and to take control of our financial future. So ask yourself honestly, whose advice are you following right now? Are you building a life based on security, or are you building a life based on understanding? And more importantly, if you look at your current situation, which path does it reflect? Because whether you realize it or not, the choices you make today are shaping your financial future. And just like Robert, there will come a moment when you have to decide, not just what to do, but how to think. After learning from both fathers, Robert started to see something that most people never notice. It wasn't just about working hard or earning money. There was a pattern, a hidden system that people were trapped in without even realizing it. Rich Dad called it the rat race. At first, the name sounded strange. But the more Robert listened, the more it made sense. Rich Dad explained it through a simple story. When you are young, you go to school. You study hard because you are told that good grades will lead to a good job. Then you graduate and start working. You earn your first paycheck, and it feels exciting. Finally, you have your own money. But soon, responsibilities begin to appear. You pay for rent, food, transportation, and other daily expenses. Then something interesting happens. As you continue working, you want a better life. So you buy more things. Maybe a new phone, a nicer apartment, or even a car. But those things come with costs, maintenance, bills, taxes, and sometimes debt. So now, you need more money to support your lifestyle. That means you have to work harder. Maybe you take on more hours, or you chase a promotion. And when you finally earn more money, what do most people do? They spend more. A bigger salary leads to a bigger lifestyle. And a bigger lifestyle leads to bigger expenses. So even though you are earning more, you are not actually moving forward. You are just running faster on the same track. That is the rat race, a cycle that never ends. To make it clearer, imagine a man named John. John starts with a job that pays him $3,000 a month. At first, he lives simply. But after a year, he gets a raise. Now he earns $4,000 a month. He feels successful, so he decides to upgrade his life. He moves to a better apartment, buys a new car, and spends more on entertainment. For a short time, he feels happy. But then the bills increase. The rent is higher, the car needs fuel and maintenance, and his overall expenses grow. Suddenly, that extra income disappears. John is back to living paycheck to paycheck. Now he feels pressure again, so he works even harder to earn more. But every time his income increases, his lifestyle grows with it. And without realizing it, John is stuck in the same cycle for years. This is where Rich Dad said something that shocked Robert. The harder you work, the deeper you go. At first, it sounds wrong. We are taught that working hard is always the answer. But what Rich Dad meant was this. If you are working hard without understanding money, you may just be strengthening the trap you are already in. The problem is not effort. The problem is direction. Then Rich Dad introduced one of the most important ideas Robert would ever learn. The difference between assets and liabilities. He explained it in the simplest way possible. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That's it. No complicated definitions. Just one question. Does it bring money in, or does it take money out? But here's where most people get confused. They think things like cars, big houses, or expensive items are assets. They feel like signs of success. But in reality, many of these things are liabilities. Take a car, for example. Imagine you save money and buy a car. As soon as you own it, you start spending money on fuel, maintenance, insurance, and repairs. Over time, the car loses value. It doesn't generate income. It only costs you money. That makes it a liability. Now compare that to something different. Imagine you use that same money to invest in a small rental property or even a simple business. Every month, it generates income. It puts money into your pocket. Over time, it may even increase in value. That is an asset. The difference is not in how expensive something is. The difference is in what it does for you financially. Rich Dad made it even clearer with another example. Two people earn the same amount of money every month. Let's say $5,000. The first person spends all of it on living expenses, entertainment, and lifestyle. At the end of the month, nothing is left. The second person chooses a different approach. They live on $4,000 and use the remaining $1,000 to invest. At first, the difference seems small. But over time, that investment starts to grow. It begins to generate income. Eventually, that extra income becomes large enough to cover their expenses. One person stays in the rat race. The other slowly steps out of it. This is the moment where Robert's thinking began to shift. He realized something powerful. It's not about how much money you earn, but how you use it. You can earn a high salary and still be stuck. Or you can earn a modest income and slowly build freedom. The real difference is not income, it's behavior. From that day on, Robert started looking at money in a completely new way. Instead of asking, "What can I buy?" he began asking, "Will this make me money or cost me money?" That single question changed everything. And now, think about your own life. Every time you earn money, you are making a choice. Are you spending it on things that take money away from you? Or are you using it to build something that gives you more in return? Because the trap is not obvious. It doesn't feel like a trap when you're inside it. It feels like progress. It feels like success. But if you look closely, you might realize you are just running faster, without ever getting free. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. As Robert continued learning from Rich Dad, he expected to hear more about money, investments, or business strategies. But instead, Rich Dad surprised him with something completely different. He said, "If you want to become wealthy, you must first learn how to control your emotions." At first, Robert didn't understand. What do emotions have to do with money? But as the conversation went deeper, he realized this might be the most important lesson of all. Rich Dad explained that most people don't stay poor because they lack opportunities. They stay poor because of how they react emotionally to money. The two biggest forces controlling people's financial lives are fear and greed. And if you don't understand them, they will control every decision you make. Let's start with fear. Fear is powerful, and it often hides behind logic. People say they want to try something new, like starting a business or investing, but then fear steps in. Fear of losing money. Fear of failing. Fear of being judged by others. So instead of taking action, they stay where they feel safe. They keep their job, even if they don't enjoy it. They follow the same routine, even if it doesn't lead to growth. It feels responsible, but in reality, it keeps them stuck. Imagine someone who dreams of starting a small business. They have ideas, they have energy, but they never begin. Why? Because they are afraid it might not work. They are afraid of losing their savings. They are afraid of what people will say if they fail. So they choose comfort over growth. And years later, they are still in the same place, wondering what could have happened if they had just tried. Rich Dad made it clear, fear is normal. Everyone feels it. Even successful people feel it. The difference is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act anyway. If you let fear control you, you will never move forward. But if you learn to act despite fear, you open the door to new opportunities. Then there is greed, which is even more dangerous because it feels good. Greed doesn't look like a problem at first. It looks like success. People think, if I buy this car, I will feel successful. If I live in this big house, people will respect me. So they spend money to create an image. They try to prove their value through what they own. But here's the problem. These things don't create freedom. They create pressure. A bigger house means bigger bills. A more expensive lifestyle means more responsibility. And instead of feeling free, people feel trapped by the very things they thought would make them happy. Rich Dad looked at Robert and said something he would never forget. People don't lose because of money, they lose because of emotions. That sentence explained everything. It's not about how much you earn. It's about how you think, how you react, and how you make decisions under pressure. This is where the real shift begins. The shift from a consumer mindset to an investor mindset. A consumer sees money as something to spend. When they earn more, they look for ways to upgrade their lifestyle. They ask, what can I buy? An investor sees money differently. They see it as a tool. When they earn more, they ask, how can I use this to create more money? The difference may seem small, but over time, it creates completely different lives. One leads to temporary satisfaction. The other leads to long-term freedom. Rich Dad gave Robert a simple but powerful exercise. He said, stop saying I can't afford it. Instead, ask yourself, how can I afford it? At first, it sounds like just a change in words, but it changes the way your brain works. When you say, I can't afford it, your thinking stops. You close the door. But when you ask, how can I afford it? Your mind starts searching for answers. Maybe you can reduce unnecessary spending. Maybe you can learn a new skill. Maybe you can create a new source of income. That one question turns limitation into possibility. Robert began practicing this, and slowly, his perspective started to change. He no longer saw money as something to spend quickly. He started seeing it as something to grow. Instead of focusing on what he didn't have, he began focusing on what he could build. Another lesson Rich Dad emphasized was the importance of starting small. Many people think they need a lot of money to begin investing or building wealth. So they wait. They wait until they have more savings, more knowledge, or more confidence. But that perfect moment never comes. And because they never start, they never grow. Rich Dad believed in small wins. Start with what you have. Even a small investment, a small idea, or a small step forward can begin the process. Each small success builds confidence. And confidence leads to bigger actions. Think of it like planting a seed. At first, it looks like nothing. There is no visible result. But if you take care of it, give it time, and stay consistent, it will grow. The same is true with money, skills, and mindset. By now, Robert was beginning to understand that the real battle was not outside. It was inside. It was not about the economy, the job market, or luck. It was about fear, discipline, habits, and the ability to think differently. And the truth is, this applies to all of us. Every financial decision we make is influenced by emotion. Every opportunity we ignore or take is shaped by our mindset. So the question is not just how much money you have. The real question is, are you in control of your emotions, or are they controlling you? Because once you learn to manage that, everything else starts to change. After all the lessons, all the stories, and all the contrasts between the two fathers, Robert finally understood something that most people spend their entire lives missing. Becoming wealthy is not about luck, and it's not about talent. It's about action and discipline. Many people dream of a better life, of financial freedom, of having control over their time, but very few actually take the steps required to make it real. They wait for the right moment, the right opportunity, or the perfect plan. But here is the truth that changes everything. There is no perfect time. If you keep waiting until you feel ready, you may never start at all. The people who move forward are not the ones who have everything figured out. They are the ones who begin, even when they feel uncertain. They start small, they learn as they go, and they keep moving. That is the real power, starting small, staying consistent, and continuing to learn. You don't need a lot of money to begin. You don't need to know everything. What you need is the willingness to take the first step, and the discipline to keep going, even when progress feels slow. Because over time, small actions compound into big results. Another important shift Robert learned is this. Money is not the goal. Money is a tool. When you see money as the goal, you will always chase it and never feel satisfied. But when you see money as a tool, you begin to use it to create freedom. Freedom to choose how you spend your time, freedom to follow your passions, and freedom to build a life that truly belongs to you. And now, this story comes back to you. Because everything you've heard today is not just about Robert. It's about your choices, your habits, and your future. No matter where you are right now, you have the ability to change your direction. It doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with a decision. So take a moment and ask yourself honestly, what is one thing you will start doing differently today? Maybe it's learning about money. Maybe it's saving a small amount. Maybe it's thinking like an investor instead of a consumer. Whatever it is, start there. If this story made you see money in a new way, take a second to share your thought in the comments. Let me know what changed for you. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more real-life English stories that can help you grow both your language and your mindset. And remember this, because it might be the most important idea of all. Your future is not decided by your job, but by how you think.